To make a contribution on the residential tenancies amendment bill. And although I'm not on the select committee and haven't had the opportunity to have heard what it sounds like some very fine submissions that came forward, it is of course an issue in every single community in our country. And so no more so than in the community of Hamilton, where even though we're here once again debating a piece of legislation that started out as a good, robust piece of Labor government legislation, being watered down by the current government yet again, even though we are here debating such a watered-down piece of legislation, at least some progress is starting to be made on this issue, although Labor would want to make much more progress than what the current bill is in front of us. My colleague Moana Maki, I think, spoke in very fine detail about the issue about the letting fees. And this is a classic issue of trying to balance up the difference between the haves and the have-nots. And generally the people who are the landlords do have the sort of financial capability and therefore the power in this relationship to not only own their own home that they live in, but also have enough financial assets to be able to own other homes that other people can live in. So they're the haves. And then we have the have-nots, the people who, for many, many reasons, and that could be financial reasons, it could be a deliberate decision that they've made not to own property, but they nonetheless are not in the position of owning and holding property, and therefore do rely heavily on some form of regulation to actually protect their interests. And as we've heard, those protections are currently not strong enough. However, Mr Chair, I would argue that the bill in front of us still doesn't make them strong enough. It does make some improvements, and I want to acknowledge the Minister for his work on that, but we do need to go an awful lot further than that. Of course, the Minister has picked up a previous Minister's work, and good on him for doing that. I do want to just dispel the myth, though, that the SOP with regard to, I call it the Rugby World Cup SOP, just for a point of clarification, really, so that people understand what we're talking about, because we are talking about giving tenants some certainty in the situation where an event comes along and landlords see an opportunity to make a lot of money. To make a lot of money because accommodation needs are going to be very high in their city. Now, I do want to dispel the myth that this is an Auckland-only issue, because if we talk about the Rugby World Cup, then the city that I live in, of Hamilton, is going to have exactly this issue that we are going to face as well. So on behalf of people who are tenants in Hamilton, I do want to support the SOP that's coming forward from Labor to actually make sure that there are some protections so that people cannot be thrown out of their accommodation in order to make space for landlords to bring people in who will be prepared to pay more because of the lack of accommodation that's going to occur in our city. And it won't just be for the Hamilton-based games for the Rugby World Cup, because there is a very, very good proposal for Hamilton to actually have a passenger train service during the course of the Rugby World Cup. From Hamilton to Auckland, and people with foresight and vision actually can see why that would make a big difference. So we will be having people, if that proposal goes ahead, then we will actually have the ability to have lots of people, take the overload from Auckland, lots of people staying in Hamilton. But it is my view, Mr Chair, that I do not want to see one family, I do not want to see one child misplaced out of the home, the place that they call home, because some landlord in Hamilton or Auckland or Christchurch or wherever wants to make way for exploiting their ability to make a bigger profit over the period of the Rugby World Cup, or any other event for that matter, because I think that says a lot about our country. If we would be prepared in that circumstance to let people from low incomes, people with children, be turfed out of their homes in order to make room for a landlord to make a greater profit, then they need to, because they would be actually, they'd be turfing people out who are paying enough rent to cover that landlord's costs. So the only reason that would actually occur is because the landlord wanted to make a profit.